Things have been too positive. Let's get negative. Man, that'll get right down to your spine. I figure with 2024 finally over and 2025 starting around the corner, everybody's releasing their best of the year list. And considering I still have like 50 movies before I can make my best of 2021 list and like 250 for the 2024 list, it's going to be a little while before I make mine. You know, I wear my inspiration from YMS on my sleeve there. But I figured, you know what would be kind of fun? Let's go through what people are saying are the worst films of 2024 so I can check those off my watch list, get them out of the way, and that's what we're going to do today. Now, I've already seen some movies that would qualify, in my opinion, as the worst movies of the year, like Drive-Away Dolls, that really showed us that one Coen brother has a lot more talent than the other. Rebel Moon Part 2, you know, Zack Snyder's Stars and Stripes Star Wars series, that somehow the second part was more abysmal to sit through than the first part, but I ended up conglomerating a list, conglomerating the absent, sorry, kicking in, conglomerating, compiling a list of the worst movies of 2024 and watched them, and I'm using Letterboxd. You can follow me on Letterboxd if you want to check out any of my movie reviews or scores, plug out of the way, and go through these worst movies of the year. Hold, please. Let's start off with one of the most controversial films of the year. And I mean controversial, not like its first film that was controversial because everybody thought they were going to show up at a theater and just start blasting. But controversial because everybody kind of hated it and it seemed really pompous. And that is Joker, a Folie à Deux, or Joker 2, a Folie à Deux, or however you say the title of the... I'm not French, all right? Now, I will say I personally really like Joker 1. I think it's a pretty good movie. I do. I think it's a pretty good movie. Definitely kind of carries this inspiration a little close to the vest, if you know what I mean. But I liked Joker 1. I thought it was good. I thought the ending was great. I thought Joaquin Phoenix was fantastic. And if you're going to tackle these superhero villains and actually make them a villain, like this movie did, unlike what Sony's doing with Marvel, this was a route you could definitely go with it. And I really enjoyed it. Now, I will say I think Joker 1 was kind of lightning in the bottle. And when they announced Joker 2, I was not really that interested in it. And then when they were like, hey man, it's a musical and it's gonna have a French subtitle, I was like, man, Todd Phillips is so up his own he's got to be checking for polyps, you know what I mean? Like, that's pretentious. And then all the reviews started coming out. Everybody hated the Joker 2. It seemed like everybody hated it. Yeah, there was good reviews out there. Quentin Tarantino apparently loved it, but a lot of people were like, yeah, this movie kind of sucks. I was like, you know what, I'll wait for streaming. That's what I did, and I watched it, and guess what? It's not that bad. But honestly, I kind of expected it to be a lot worse than it is. And actually, in context of watching the film, the musical parts actually do kind of make sense. They kind of fit within that grand illusion that the Joker has. My biggest issue with the whole entire film was it's kind of pointless. The entire movie is basically the court drama. I mean, I guess I get what like Todd Phillips is going for. It like reduces the Joker to nothing. Like there's people who watched Joker 1 and was like, I do that. Now they watch Joker 2, and Joker 2 kind of just strips away any kind of grandiose opinions of Joker and reduces it down to nothing. But as a film, that kind of makes it pointless. It's kind of a pointless watch. It's kind of completely pointless. I think it's funny, and I kind of admire Todd Phillips for going that route to just basically be like, yeah, the Joker's kind of nothing, and if you kind of, you know, you're just, it's kind of nothing. I like that, but to watch the movie, the entire thing is a melodramatic court case, and it has a bunch of musical numbers that kind of just pad the runtime, and it just does a whole lot of nothing. Now, I will say Joaquin Phoenix comes back and gives another great performance. The cinematography and lighting is all pretty top-notch. It's a good-looking movie. I got nothing out of this movie, but it did nothing egregious to make me hate it either. And like I said, I was kind of surprised that the musical numbers didn't really come out as pretentious as I kind of thought they would, or the film didn't come out quite as pretentious as I thought they would. But at the end of the day, it's a 5 out of 10. Dear Santa. Dear Santa, we watched for Christmas leading up. If you don't know what this movie is, it is Jack Black playing Jack Black in a Jack Black movie. Now, I like Jack Black, always have. I've not liked him the past couple years. He basically just plays Jack Black in like everything now. Because of that, he kind of like boils into this stereotype idiocracy that is what people associate with Jack Black, and that's exactly what happens here, and it gets really old, and he's the best part of the movie. If you know what the movie's about, it's about a kid who writes a letter to Santa. Then guess what? Because of his dyslexia, Satan. It is super duper boring. It is not funny. The kids cannot act. They're terrible in it. But then also most of the film pads its runtime with this like really weak sauce divorce plot line between the parents that just is lame. You know, it's basically this hitch in this plot to basically like pin down where the main character is going to go with his Satan wishes. And yeah, it just kind of sucks. Basically, Satan offers the kid 3 wishes. I will give you 3 wishes. I will fulfill these wishes, but I get your soul in return. But then they, you know what, I'm gonna spoil this movie. I normally don't spoil movies. This movie's not worth watching. Spoiler, if you don't want to be spoiled, jump to the next time code that's in the timeline to the next movie. But 3, 2, 1. Jack Black's not actually Satan. He's just like a lower level demon, which completely takes away from any of the weight or like actual like thing it had going for it, because it just undermines like the entire story it's trying to sell. And guess what? The demon has a heart. It's really lame. It's just lame, and it took away from any like the spark of mild originality that the film actually had going for it. It's lame. It's a 3 out of 10. I didn't like it. I'm not going to watch it again. Next, I'm going to talk about History of Evil. This is a movie you can stream on Shudder or AMC Plus. It is like the Dollar Tree Civil War. If you've seen Civil War by Alex Garland, pretty much same thing. It's kind of the same plot. It is about the United States. It's been taken over by a new faction of government that's very oppressive, very religious, and there's like this set of rebels. We start the film off with somebody trying to smuggle out a rebel prisoner that has escaped, and along the way, they stay at this safe house that ends up being haunted. First off, I want to say that the story idea here is actually pretty solid. The premise here helps to create the film's scope. It makes the film feel a little larger than what it's actually doing. And I kind of went into this one expecting this one to be a garbage fire because of its insanely low IMDb rating, and it's not really as bad as the IMDb rating. Now, it's not great. It's not a great movie. It's not like a 5 or higher. It's probably a 4, probably closer to a 4. It probably is a 4. It's a 4. But it's not nearly as bad as I was kind of expecting going into it. It looks okay. You know, it's not poorly shot or poorly lit, really. The performances are kind of okay. It's just a movie that kind of sputters its wheels, if that makes any sense. It doesn't have as much division from Civil War to not feel like the mockbuster version of Civil War if you've seen Civil War. That was something that kind of kept taking me out of the experience as well. But then I actually think the worst part of the entire movie is the haunted house elements, the horror elements. When the movie was just focusing on its dystopia and these militants that are coming in trying to discover them, they're trying to stay hidden and concealed, and that was when the movie was actually really enthralling, and I was like, you know what, I can kind of get behind this. I kind of like this. But then you lump in these ghosts and this horror haunted house element, and the main character, main male character, I guess there's not really like a central character, that has this really cringy, derivative, and really plot-driven change of character. It became really stale at the back end. If the film leaned more into the, its dystopia and trying to survive that rather than throwing in this cheap haunted house aspect of it, it probably would have been higher on my rating, but I'm going to stick with a 4 out of 10. Not as bad as I thought it was going to be going into it. So, hey, that's a bonus. A recent movie trend has been, hey, let's take childhood classic characters that's now entered the public domain and let's make a horror movie out of them. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is a good example of that. It's kind of like one of the founders of this new genre of horror, and that movie was terrible. And yes, I know Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2 is out, and that could easily have made this list, but I haven't watched it yet. We're going to get together with a couple friends and watch it then, so it's going to be a few weeks from now. I'll watch it eventually. I have it on Steelbook. I have the Scream Factory Steelbook of Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey Part 2, or Blood and Honey 2. What's the subtitle? Look, man, I got a problem, okay? I'll be real with you. That Steelbook FOMO got me hard. Anyway, a bunch of these movies are coming out. One of those is Steamboat. That has David Howard Thornton, I think is how you say it. He's Art the Clown. The guy who plays Art the Clown. He's going to play Steamboat. I don't know if it's actually Steamboat Willie, but Steamboat in the new Steamboat Willie horror movie they're making. But in case you didn't know, there's another Mickey Mouse horror movie that's out called The Mousetrap. This movie came out in a lightning quick pace, and I'm assuming they did it just to capitalize and cash grab upon not only the Mickey Mouse IP, or I guess Steamboat Willie IP going into the public domain, but also the interest that is behind Steamboat. And I think this film was out just to capture upon that, because, and I feel like this because a coworker of mine was like, hey, that Steamboat Willie movie came out. It's called like Mousetrap or something like that. And I'm like, I don't think that's what it is. So I looked it up. Now they're two different movies. I watched this movie and it was fucking terrible. This movie, the people involved, the production company, you pieces of shit. This movie was such a waste of 80 minutes on every front whatsoever. This soulless piece of derivative shit that just is out onto all the Tubi and streaming services to just capitalize on already a trend. This trend of taking these, childhood characters, making these shitty low-grade horror movies with them. And then also on top of that is, hey, look, somebody else is doing one about Steamboat Willie. Well, let's just this out as fast as possible. This movie is about a group of adults. You can't even call them like teenagers because the whole point is they're turning 21. They want to go partying. Having a surprise birthday party for one of them at her workplace, which is like this weird indoor arcade park. Well, the manager is obsessed with Steamboat Willie, has a Steamboat Willie mask, which just looks like a cheap Mickey Mouse mask that's painted black and white. Somebody wearing that mask starts killing them off one by one. This movie was insufferable. It thinks it's so much more clever than it is. It thinks it's so smart with lines of dialogue like, they're going off on their own. If this is a horror movie, they'd be dead. Nah. You. It's one of those movies that's like, look how smart I am as they thumb their ass. God, the kills are so weak. It's like water sauce kills. It feels completely soulless. There's no soul in this whatsoever. It's just utter garbage, front to finish. And then I'm like thinking about it, it's like the way the movie's structured is, it plays through the movie, but it also has this intercutting non-linear story where one of the survivors is telling these officers about how it went down and stuff like that. And as you just watch this, it's like, man, they're just like rubbing their nipples and going, oh man, look how smart we are. Look how self-aware we are. Oh my God, I'm so self-aware right now. I know filmmakers out there want to be like, oh, I don't like to say negative things about movies because people worked hard. Nobody worked hard on this movie. If you worked hard on it, you wasted part of your life trying to polish this pile of shit. You could have done something much greater than this. If you even put any ounce of effort into this movie, which I can't see it on screen, if you would put any kind of amount of effort into this movie, you could have just done it somewhere else. 1 out of 10. 1 out of 10, this movie's dog. It's the second worst movie I watched all year long, behind one that we're going to save for a little bit later. But because this movie was so bad, another movie I had on my watch list actually just got X'd from my watch list because I couldn't do it again. It was Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Death and Porridge. Now, a movie that wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be going into it is Borderlands. Hear me out. I'm not someone who's super invested in the story or the world of Borderlands. I played Borderlands 1, 2, and the pre-sequel. I like the games a lot. I think they're a lot of fun. I want to play Borderlands 3. But the world of Borderlands, the characters and stuff, and the story of Borderlands, to me personally, is kind of just like a nice little cherry on top of the gameplay that is the sundae. Does that make any sense? So for me, I'm going into the Borderlands movie with not like a lot of attachment to these characters or really this world, other than I think the games are really fun. I will say, going into this, I was not very excited for this one because, one, Eli Roth directing. Am I going into Borderlands getting, Hostel Part 1 or Green Inferno Eli Roth, or am I walking in getting Knock Knock Eli Roth? When Borderlands was announced that, hey, it's also going to be PG-13, I went, knock knock Eli Roth. I'm just gonna skip this one completely, especially when the reviews came out. The reviews on this are abysmal. The box office is brutal. Yikes. I started watching the film and I didn't think it was that bad. Now I do want to say one thing is I read in IMDb trivia that apparently there is like some kind of like rated R version of it floating around where it was like much more violent. And I'm just gonna say this, if you flopped this hard, just release that rated R one. What's it gonna hurt? You might earn more money, right? When in reading the trivia, I did find out that Eli Roth couldn't come back to do the reshoots. There was like an extensive 2-week reshoot period for the movie. And as you watch the movie, you can tell because there is like 2 different directors in this film. There's like 2 different levels of direction in this film, 2 different levels of quality in this film. And I would really like to know who directed what, because some of the action in this movie is handled insanely bad, like really, really bad. If you want a good example of it, when Cate Blanchett's character Lilith shows up and finally finds Tiny Tina, that whole segment is abysmally directed. It looks so unchoreographed. It's so stiff. Then you have a scene in the movie that is like when they go to the Bloodshots lair. That scene in that movie is actually great. Like that's actually a great sequence for like majority of the film. Now it could be one of those things where it's just a standout in a pretty mediocre movie. Sure, but like I keep thinking about that scene after watching it. Not anything else in the movie, not a single thing about the rest of the movie, but that scene in particular I keep going back to. Maybe it's because they use Motorhead in the soundtrack. That's probably fair. That is my favorite band. There's like I say black light, but like the come on brain, the absence went too far. Not only did it erase Mousetrap, it erased the English function. Function English not good. reinstalled. The glow in the eyes like mask scene, the scene with that was actually really cool. And then the actual action set piece through that whole thing is actually pretty well done. Now, the guy who directed half of this was Tim Miller, I think it's his name, who I believe worked on like Deadpool and stuff. So, I mean, it makes a little bit of sense that the action, if he directed that scene, would be handled a little better than Eli Roth's. As the overall movie, it's not really that bad. Sure, the CGI is abysmal. Sure, they go through all these areas of Pandora that's just basically empty, vast openness. They don't really do a whole lot within the world of Pandora. We don't really explore Pandora. The story is kind of mid as the performances are decent, surprisingly. The two standouts being Cate Blanchett and Jack Black. I know I just ragged on Jack Black, but Jack Black voices Claptrap in the movie. And guess what? He actually feels like a character. He doesn't feel like Jack Black. He actually feels like Claptrap. And while watching it, you can go, oh yeah, this is definitely Jack Black. I can hear the Jack Black voice. It's good enough, and he's doing enough inflection in these lines that you kind of go, all right, no, this is Claptrap. This kind of feels like Claptrap. It doesn't really feel so Jack Blacky. And because of that, I found it pretty enjoyable. Borderlands was not nearly as bad as I thought, and when the movie ended and the credits rolled, I remember the small group that we watched it together with all kind of said the same thing of like, that wasn't nearly as bad as I thought going into it. Like, I thought going into this was going to be one of the worst movies of the year, and it's actually, I think, on this list of movies I went through, maybe the best one, the one I liked the most. It's definitely the one I'd be considering to rewatch over the rest of these for sure, but I didn't really hate it. I kind of liked what it had going for it, and I think if you're not a fan of Borderlands, trust me, you're not going to walk in this movie going, oh my god, Borderlands was the best movie of the year, but you could easily get some enjoyment out of its runtime, and it would also make for a decent background movie too. There's some good song choices thrown throughout that does kind of fit the vibe of Borderlands. The original score is wickedly forgettable though. But yeah, I think this film's kind of like right in the middle for me. I'm like at a 5 or a 5.5 out of 10. It was not nearly as, I literally walked into this going, this is going to be a 1 or a 2. And I left at like, yeah, this is actually kind of watchable. I will extend an olive branch to Borderlands fans out there that my wife really loves Borderlands. She's really into the story, and she was kind of upset with some of the directions they went with the story. Borderlands is a franchise too that like you could just make up new characters, right? You can just make up new characters. You don't have to tie it in to like these characters, you know, and then you would have avoided that like diehard fan base that's about what you did to their beloved characters. The main thing I was missing was the vulgarity and the extreme violence, which I do wish was here, but overall it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought. Speaking of movies I didn't think was as bad as I thought they were going to be going into it, The Crow. Now I do want to say out of the gate that much like Borderlands, The Crow is not my favorite IP ever. When they announced the remake, I saw some like the footages, like not footages, some of the screenshots of like Bill Skarsgård as what's his name, Sting. It looked really bad. You know what I mean? It's like they were like, hey, everybody loved Joker and Harley. Let's replace that Hot Topic character with a new Hot Topic characters. It's like the, oh babe, it's us. Oh my God, like you're totally my Joker and I'm your Harley. Except for now, it's you're totally my Eric and I'm totally your nondescript girlfriend that I don't remember her name of that dies early into the movie, and then he decides to give up his entire life and you're not really too sure why he decides to give up his entire life and soul for this girl. I guess he's already dead, so he doesn't give up his life, but he gives up his soul to save this girl to get all these powers to get her back. And then, you know, that whole thing goes sideways. So he's like, you can have my soul for her soul. And you're like, I don't know really why you're really doing that, because like you just met this girl. But I guess they're kind of implying they've been together for longer than they have. But the film doesn't communicate that. The film kind of communicates that they just met each other like the other day, because it kind of starts off in a nonlinear way. And because of that nonlinear way, you're not really understanding or very sure of what the time has passed between them meeting and how long they've been together, because it kind of feels like a one night stand or like a, you know, real hot and passionate flame fling. And they don't really take the time to develop the relationship naturally. So you're like, I don't know how long time this has been going, because the film's communication isn't really the strongest suit of this film whatsoever. And it doesn't even do a very good job when it comes down to the main villain of the film. The main villain of the film just kind of goes around killing people. You're like, I don't really know why he's killing people. Like, I don't really know what he does. He's kind of evil. He kind of does things that are evil and mystic. But, you know, he kind of has this like mystic evil power and stuff like that. He kind of understands what Eric is as being the Crow. And so he's like, we should kill this guy and then we should do this thing. But then when Eric shows up and kind of sends him to the other world, he's like, I don't know what this is. And then he gets eaten by this like cracking tentacle monster, and they drag him down to the depths of, I'm assuming, hell, but it just looks like black ink. But I don't understand like why Eric's willing to give up his soul for this girl he just met. 4 out of 10. We've gotten some movies here recently that's like the last a director's going to do, right? And I think as a filmmaker, it seems like the last movie you want to make it special, right? You want to go out on a bang, on a high note, especially when you're a big time like celebrated director, right? Clint Eastwood dropped his newest movie, Juror 2, which I haven't watched yet. Is The Boy in the Hair in the last Miyazaki movie? I don't know. Who knows with that guy? We got Francis Ford Coppola's final movie, Megalopolis. What a turd. So hot take, Francis Ford Coppola is a director. I think majority of his films suck that I've seen, and I think Godfather Part 1 and Part 2 are fantastic, and I think Apocalypse Now is fantastic, and I think he's a director that was lucky enough to fall into these and was competent enough not to ruin them. I think he is not a great director, and I will die on that hill, and I think Dementia 13, Twix, and especially Megalopolis proves that point, because Francis Ford Coppola spent his own $100 million to make this pile of garbage. Think about that. $100 million. What else could you have done with $100 million, Mr. Coppola, other than this? I could have funded a movie by a real director, or I could have set it on fire. All those things would have been better options than Megalopolis. So Francis Ford Coppola, why don't you go back to the club? It's embarrassing. Like, could you imagine that being your last movie? Holy shit. This movie is unwatchable. I hated every second of it. And the only reason why I'm giving it a 2 out of 10 instead of a 1 out of 10 is because some moments was so ironically hilarious. Some of the lines of delivery was hilarious. The scene with Shia LaBeouf and Aubrey Plaza was absolutely cringe and hilarious. Something's happening. The more I think about the movie, the more I'm remembering of it. Hold on, I gotta stop that. That's bliss. This is what people who run the world would talk like, and this is how the world will work. It's a 2 out of 10, man. I'm done talking about this movie. It's terrible. Speaking of god-awful, the worst movie I watched of the entire year, that's right, I'm saving 2 more for after this. The worst movie of the entire year I've seen so far is Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie. I grew up with SpongeBob, much like most people my age. SpongeBob is treasured in a way. I've watched quite a bit of the show as a kid growing up. Well, I guess this is the 3rd movie I've seen. I've seen Sponge Out of Water, which I really liked. I watched the one after it they did for Paramount Plus. That was mediocre as shit. And then this one was insufferable. I haven't seen the first one yet, although be on the lookout for a screen to console. Be on the lookout for a screen to console. But I watched this one, and what a way to just the corpse of SpongeBob. Just a weekend at Bernie's him around, and this brutal, uninspired, unenergetic, unimaginative, just waste of time and a waste of an IP. A waste to pull you in and just ruin your afternoon if you have any semblance of care whatsoever. It's a movie I don't think kids would even like. The animation is horrendous. The animation looks as cheap as those like old like Christian like VeggieTales animations. Like that's the Windows 95 version. This is like the Windows Vista version of that same style of animation. You know what I mean? It's not even like it's a Sandy Cheeks movie. Like Sandy Cheeks is a good side character. She has nothing as a single character to make her stand out and be like, I want an entire movie of Sandy Cheeks. Great side character, great extra piece of the universe. Absolutely. As a side character, you go, all right, well, you know, Sandy Cheeks is a little one-dimensional. Are we going to spend some time kind of exploring her? Nope. We're not going to do that at all. We're not going to explore this character or develop this character any further than her idioisms that we've already like had. I don't even know if that's the right word. But the thing is, like, we get introduced to Sandy. I wanted to call her Sandy Hook. That's a little wrong. Sandy Cheeks, that's her name. We get introduced to her family and you're like, oh man, we may learn some dynamics there. No, her family character is more in-depth than her herself. Like Sandy Cheeks is the same thing as in the TV show. You just see her now for 90 minutes instead of 5. You don't explore anything new with Sandy Cheeks. I mean, yeah, you get to learn about her family, but like at the same time, her family kind of steals the spotlight from her when they show up. SpongeBob's here to do all nothing. SpongeBob's here to be a nuisance. He's here to be a problem. He's here to drive plot devices. That's all he is. He's a yellow plot device for this movie. I like SpongeBob, but he's just an idiot in this movie. He's not this lovable, like gullible kind of goofball that, what a scam. You know, SpongeBob's out there sponging around just being a sponge scam. He just ruins everything. He destroys everything. And you just watch him going like, is this the same SpongeBob? It isn't the SpongeBob I know. This isn't the SpongeBob I grew up with. I don't know who this SpongeBob is. I don't know what he's doing to the corpse of the SpongeBob I loved, but I'm not okay with it. Mr. Krabs, the rest of the gallery's here for 2 minutes of screen time, maybe. Patrick, Mr. Krabs, Squidward does nothing the entire movie whatsoever. The villain is horrendous. First off, Wanda Skite, whatever her name is, you know who I'm talking about by her voice. She sucks in everything she's in. She brings down every single thing she's in. She's the main villain of this movie. She's abysmal. And all the live action parts of this looks like first draft Spy Kids ideas. You know what I mean? It's so terrible on so many levels. Another thing with SpongeBob is like we get the original characters, we get the original voice actors, for the original characters. It doesn't feel like anybody wants to be there. Nobody wants to be in this movie. And I feel like they're just doing the voices out of like obligation or maybe contract. But when you listen to it, there's no energy. There's no life to the performances. There's no care. Nobody is passionate about this IP anymore. And it shows. I hated this movie. I was super offended by this movie. Look, man, I'm part of the generation that thrives on getting through my day by reliving nostalgia, okay? I need that nostalgia to make it through my day, okay? So if you're gonna take a thing that I love and you're just gonna it right in front of me, at least have a little bit of class and dress it up a little bit. Just stop. Just get rid of SpongeBob. Just cancel SpongeBob. The old stuff's good enough to thrive on its own. Move on to something else. Find a different IP, man. Come up with something different. 1 out of 10. Don't watch this. Now, this last section I'm going to talk about, I'm going to lump these together, okay? And that is the Sony Marvel universe, the MSU, the Marvel Sony universe. But I'm going to talk about Kraven the Hunter. Also, dude, if you're that Sony CEO that's like, oh man, I don't know why people don't like these movies. These are good movies. I don't know why they bombed. If you're making these decisions at Sony, A-okaying both Madam Web and Kraven the Hunter, hey, Luigi.
That was a joke, and I just was joking.
No, I watched Kraven the Hunter. I tried to go into this one pretty blind and kind of hopeful that'd be kind of fun. Like, I heard some kind of mixed things about it, but not really very much. It's supposed to be like a violent, bloody time, right? I wanted to see it. Went and saw it. Oh, why was I stuck in the theater for that? I should have been at home. I could have been watching Instagram Reels instead. It was awful. Kraven the Hunter was Kraven the Stupid. It was not good. So Kraven the Hunter was really bad. I like Aaron Taylor Johnson. He's the best part of the entire movie. Russell Crowe's not bad either. The Rhino is the worst villain of the year. Maybe one of the worst villains I've ever seen, period. That's like literally what he just does one random scene. You're like, what was that? It just like cuts. And you're just like, what was that? That had like a line of dialogue that was like, there's an animal in all of us. Like, that's the level of dialogue we're working with. Every line of dialogue was just basic exposition dumping left and right. These characters feel unbelievable. How is the CGI this bad? How is the budget this high and the CGI is this bad? I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm really disappointed in this. I was kind of hoping for like a 5 out of 10. I was kind of hoping for some good gory moments, for some fun moments. I got basically none of that. It's really boring. The majority of the movie doesn't even have Aaron Taylor Johnson in it. Majority of the movie is just like Kid Kraven getting his Kraven lore on. And they also try to cram in the Rhino with his dad. His dad's kind of a bad guy. His dad should have been the main villain. It would have been a lot more interesting of story. They kind of throw that to the side for the Rhino. There's maybe 30 minutes left of the movie and I'm like, what's the plot of this movie? Like, where are we going with this? Like, what's the main like plot? What's the main like arcing point of this story? Like, we spent kind of all this time bouncing around between different things. Like, what's the humdrum gonna get this whole thing together so we can get to the climax? What is it gonna be? And then it's Rhino. Kraven, I'm going to give a 3 out of 10 to. I'm kind of just done talking about this movie. It's terrible. But that saves us for our last movie. What I think everybody would probably put close to their number one, if not their number one worst film of the year, Madam Web. I did not see this one in theaters. I'm glad I didn't see this one in theaters. I saw it while building Legos, and that is the only way I could have suffered through finishing this movie. I have not seen a movie this poorly put together, where I gave The Mousetrap a 1 out of 10 for being soulless. The Mousetrap was more competently put together than Madam Web. I've never seen this level of immaturity in a major studio film, I think, ever before. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. This is a feat of its own of how bad this movie is. First off, Madam Web. She's a terrible character. Dakota Johnson does not want to be there. Her performance is actually probably the worst I've ever seen from her. I feel like everybody kind of knew this was everybody but the villain. The guy who plays the villain. I think everybody else knew this was Sweeney Todd. What's her name? Sweeney Tits. She shows up in this movie. She didn't give a I've seen her be great in things. The other two Madam Web chicks, I don't even remember them. One was a skateboarder and the other one was Hispanic, I think. I don't know. But the thing is, they get these 3 people that's supposed to be like the Web sisters, right? They do nothing. Like, they do absolutely nothing. They have like 5 minutes of screen time of actually being, no, that's actually an exaggeration. They have 30 seconds of screen time. It reminds me of Dragon Ball Evolution, where on the special features of Dragon Ball Evolution, they're like, they spend 10 minutes talking about how great this Chi-Chi versus Chi-Chi fight is. And they actually watch it in film and it's like 40 seconds long. That's how I feel about this. Like, they're like selling you these like Madam Web characters and being like, look how cool they are. And they're like 5 seconds in the movie. And you're like, what? I feel cheated. executed. The villain was terrible. Not as bad as Rhino. I love the fact that his entire motive is like, I can kind of see the future, and because I can kind of see the future, I'm going to kill these teenage girls. And then he can't because Madam Web also has like the same That's So Raven power. So like she's always like one step ahead, and he's like, I don't understand how she's one step ahead of me. The movie has some of the worst ADR I've ever seen. There literally cuts to him in one scene where he's standing there not saying anything. There's like a line of dialogue speaking while he just stares at the camera vaguely. The action is some of the most incoherent and poorly handled action I've ever seen in my life. It's almost like they're like, if we want to create exciting action, we need to like just spin the camera around. Like that will do all the work for us. See how action packed it is? So much action. Oh, it's intense. It's so stupid. It's so incoherent. Like I have no idea what's going on in the action set pieces. There's no adrenaline. There's no energy. I feel like I can feel the filmmaker's intent of being like, look how cool this is gonna be, and like nobody told the director like this is stupid. Like you should have got like Ilya Naishuller or like I don't know what's the guys that did Crank or something. Like it's trying to like impose that level of energy, but not understanding the excitement at all. Like this is somebody who probably, I'd say for most of her life, got the participation award, and that's what I feel like Madam Web is. Madam Web is the participation award for watching the worst movies of 2024. That was rough to sit through. I'm sure there's other ones on my 250 some movies on my watch list from this year that would actually make my worst of the year list, but I wanted to watch some what seems like most people consider the worst movies of the year, and I'm glad I can finally just cross these ones off and not have to worry about them again. Yeah, I mean, some of them weren't as bad as I thought they were, some of them were worse than I thought they would be, and some of them was just right. Hey look, it's me. I'm a tiny head. I'm a tiny talking head. If you want to support what I do, consider becoming a member or a Patreon. You can become a member here on YouTube, or you can go to patreon.com and subscribe there, I guess is subscribe. $1 a month gets you credits at the end of this video that you would probably be seeing here if I had any. But also gets you access to a week early for videos, uncensored videos, and ad-free videos. All for $1. Bringing the Dollar Tree back, baby. See you the next time. See you. Peace till next time. See you next time. See you next time. Bye.